Hi everybody and welcome to this made for YouTube series of Mutual Fund Corner, and today we're going to be talking about REITs or the real estate investment trust. And why is that? Because in the budget we've seen some announcements that have come through for REITs, and experts say that they're going to be quite beneficial really. So the first announcement that came in the budget was that FPIs or the foreign portfolio investors can now invest in the NCDs issued by REITs or even InvITs for that matter. And earlier the case was that they could only they could only subscribe to the bonds issued by corporates, and because REITs and InvITs are trusts, so they couldn't subscribe to it. Now, of course, REITs and InvITs have been included in their list. So this should bring a lot of money into the system for REITs and InvITs to tap into, and maybe refinancing can be easier. So it's not just new REITs, but even the existing ones will find the going easier from here on. The other one is that the dividend used to be taxed. There was a withholding tax of 10%. Which could later be, of course, claimed. So net there was no effect. But now that operational issue has also been eased, so they are saying that that dividend now doesn't have to be taxed at source, right? So the way the REIT, and today, of course, we are going to be talking about REIT. So the way the REIT is structured is that there is a trust which owns a special purpose vehicle. And that special purpose vehicle is what owns the assets. So this special purpose vehicle, when it gave the dividend, they used to be taxed at 10%, and now that has been removed, right? So net there is no impact. It's just that the working has been made easier from here on. So why are we talking about REITs? Well, already we've seen the Brookfield REITs IPO come through, and a lot of the experts say that this is a category which is going to grow a lot. There will be a lot more interest here on. So therefore I thought that a primer on what is a REIT, REIT exactly है क्या, कैसे काम करता है, उसका tax structure क्या है, वो आपकी portfolio में कहाँ fit होता है, what are the kind of advantages or even disadvantages that a REIT has. I thought we'll just do a primer on all of those so that all of you, our viewers, can be prepared for the future, right? So first of all, let's start with what is a REIT. तो आपने पिछले 1-2 साल से REITs का नाम तो सुना ही होगा. Now, REITs is nothing but real estate investment trust, right? Now, all of us are familiar with mutual funds. So, mutual funds क्या करते हैं? They invest, they are a vehicle. They invest in things like, say, equity shares. Some invest in debt. Some invest in both equity and debt. They have some government bonds that they subscribe to, right? So, as a retail investor, मुझे कोई share directly नहीं खरीदना है. मेरा जो म्यूचुअल फंड है वो 50 या 100 शेयर या 30 शेयर जैसा भी है वो खरीदता है, एंड आई बाय यूनिट्स ऑफ दैट म्यूचुअल फंड, राइट? सो बाय इन्वेस्टिंग अ स्मॉल अमाउंट ऑफ मनी इन द म्यूचुअल फंड, आई एम एबल टू गेट एक्सपोजर टू सो मेनी ऑफ देयर अंडरलाइंग एसेट्स, राइट? Likewise with REITs, the basic principle, उसका जो basic principle है वो same है like a mutual fund, right? That you buy units of REIT and the REIT itself invests in property. तो जहाँ म्यूचुअल फंड में शेयर है, डेट है, वहाँ REITs में रियल एस्टेट है, right? That is the fundamental difference. Now what they do is they can buy office property, commercial property, जैसे कोई मॉल है या कोई कोई और तरह की commercial property है. Some REITs even invest in residential property. तो या तो आपका जो REIT है उसमें एक कोई बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट होगा, या कई बार काफ़ी प्रोजेक्ट्स हो सकते हैं. हमने कोटक के REITs का फंड ऑफ फंड्स देखा है. सो दैट इज अ फंड ऑफ फंड विच इन्वेस्ट्स इन डिफरेंट REITs, राइट? जैसे म्यूचुअल फंड का जो फंड ऑफ फंड होता है, इट इन्वेस्ट इन डिफरेंट स्कीम्स ऑफ म्यूचुअल फंड्स. दिस फंड ऑफ फंड इन्वेस्ट इन डिफरेंट REITs. एंड इसमें ग्लोबल डाइवर्सिफिकेशन भी है. वो ओवरसीज में भी रेजिडेंशियल प्रॉपर्टीज एक्सेट्रा उनकी काफ़ी हैं. सो दैट इज बेसिकली वॉट अ REIT इज. ओके, सो मोटा मोटा दिस इज वॉट इट इज. द ओनली अदर डिफरेंस इज दैट REITs इज लिस्टेड ऑन द स्टॉक एक्सचेंज, राइट? सो यू कैन ट्रेड in REIT. So we'll get to what are the advantages, etc. First, let's understand what the REIT really is. तो अब REIT हमने ये समझ लिया है कि वो रियल एस्टेट में इन्वेस्ट करती है. तो अब उसके पैसे कैसे बनते हैं? हाउ डू यू मेक मनी इन REITs? So there are two primary sources of income. One is renting and leasing, right? So I have a property. Whoever rents it, the rent that they pay me is my income. right? As well, I can invest in other sources, right? Say 20% of REITs, for example, I can put in equity shares of real estate companies or corporate debt. So I get also income from there, right? So one is, of course, the income that the assets are generating. And then because it's listed on the exchange, there is also capital appreciation, right? So this is what is passed on to you as a consumer of REITs. Now, what happens is that when you buy into a REITs, you're buying a unit, right? So I don't have to go out and buy a property as such, right? And आजकल everybody knows कि property के क्या rates चल रहे हैं. So for everybody who doesn't want that kind of exposure, I don't want कि मेरे portfolio का large chunk, बहुत बड़ा chunk जो है वो किसी एक property में रह जाए. So I can invest in a REIT. It starts at minimum investment of 50,000 rupees. So if I buy 1 unit or 2 unit or even 10 units for that matter, my exposure can be diversified. So that is one of the big advantages of REITs. And it's you don't have the concentration to any one geography. आपने देखा है कि कई बार लोग कहते हैं कि अरे बॉम्बे की मार्केट ज़्यादा अच्छा कर रही है या बैंगलोर की मार्केट बहुत चल रही है, बट फलाने शहर की मार्केट नहीं चल रही. So this way you are not tied down to any one market. You can choose a REIT which has a sufficient amount of diversification. It is also more transparent than the real estate market per se. Right? So if I was to buy a house, and now of course with RERA coming in, there is a lot more transparency that has come into the real estate market. But even then, because the REIT is listed, it is governed by a set of very, very stringent rules, you will find that the transparency is a lot more. I already spoke about diversification. Uske alawa, it can act as an inflation hedge. Right? The other thing is that it is less volatile, right? I just said कि 20% जो है they can invest in either under construction or corporate bonds or government bonds, etc., which means that the balance 80% you have to invest only in assets which are generating income, right? So therefore you don't have the risk to your portfolio is limited to that 20%, and even within that, to the extent that they have government bonds, etc., is not a worry. But to the extent that they have under construction property or equity shares or bonds of real estate companies, that is really the extent to where there is some gray area that how will it perform. The balance 80% of it is in assets which should already be generating revenue, and which is why there is a lot more stability in terms of cash flows, because a lot of the REITs they try to lock in rentals for many years ahead. So that money is going to keep coming in to that extent. Now, what is the tax structure of a REIT, right? So we already said that dividend, there's no longer TDS on it, right? But the income that you get from interest or from rentals, that will be taxed at your tax slab. तो अगर आपका tax slab जो भी 30-40% जो भी है, उस पे आपको वो टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. इसके अलावा, if there is any capital appreciation on sale, now it is listed, right? So it is, as the price fluctuates, you may be making a profit even on that, right? So if you were to sell your REITs unit, that capital gains, if you sell it in less than 3 years, it will be taxed at 15% up to 1 lakh. If you sell it after 3 years, you will have to pay 10% capital gains tax on it. Now, other than this, what is the checklist to keep in mind, right? So if you want to go out and invest in REITs, आपको ये क्या-क्या चीज़ें हैं जो ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए. The first thing is that you must see the quality of the portfolio and the cash flow, right? Quality of portfolio is what? The assets that the REIT has invested in, that is the portfolio, right? So uski kya quality hai? Who are the builders? Do they have a track record of paying on time? So therefore you can assess what will be the cash flow. As well, what is the leverage situation? Leverage का क्या मतलब है कि हमने कितना पैसा market से उधार उठाया है, right? So the builder, you have to see how leveraged is the builder, and therefore will it affect their cash flows. As well, the experience of the fund management team. Now, real estate is something which is very specialized, right? Therefore, the person, like say in the person managing your REIT should have experience in the real estate market, and not just in say any one specific market, but across India or across the universe that they're planning to use as the investable universe of their REIT. As well, what are the risk management policies of the issuer? This, of course, I don't need to elaborate. सबको पता होगा. Tenant quality क्या है? And also, you have to see that 20%, right, which we spoke about, which can be invested in under construction or equity shares of real estate companies or debt of real estate companies. So this is a portion also which you shouldn't overlook. You shouldn't say that, oh, 80% is generating income, I can overlook this. No, you should see what is that under construction, portfolio, etc. That will be very, very important. As well, there is something called as the weighted average lease expiry. Now, what does this mean? This means कि जितने भी assets हैं portfolio में of a REIT, what is the average expiry of the lease? Lease is the rental agreement. So the longer it is, the better it is for you as an investor of REIT, right? So try and find REITs which have longer lease expiries. Other than that, what is the vacancy rate? Vacancy rate means that, I have a mall. How many units in that mall are vacant? So the vacancy rate should be as low as possible. As well, what is the concentration of the top 10 issuers, right? So you don't want that if there is a default, a large chunk of your REITs gets wiped out. So you should try and see that there should be not a very high concentration, at least in the top 10 issuers. And other than that, the other thing to watch out for REITs is that, as of now, the management fees is quite high. So there's about 3% of the property management on the property management income, and there is 1% on the distributed income that you have to pay. So you have to see whether or not it's really fitting into your portfolio, what place it has, and whether or not you need this kind of exposure. And if you're buying a REIT, do also check in your overall portfolio what is the exposure to real estate that you already have. And in India, the tendency is that we tend to be very overweight real estate, right? So don't want to add REIT to that as well. So you must see that there is a balance in your portfolio. And as of now, there are of course just a handful of REITs, right? बहुत ही कम है. But in the days to come, we expect many more IPOs. And yeah, that is the other thing to look out for, is कि REITs का NFO नहीं होता, IPO होता है. So we expect some more IPOs to come in for REITs in the days ahead. So do evaluate very, very carefully, and we'll be happy to take any of your questions. Do write them down in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to take them up later. Thanks very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful.